Hello, and thank you for listening to Texas History for Kids. I'm your host, Michelle Gallegos, an educator, writer, history nerd, and novice investigator. Each week on the show, we will learn about interesting parts of Texas history, from battles and historical figures to the odd and enchanted. Hi, and welcome back to Texas History for Kids. This is episode 101. I'm your host, Michelle, and with me today is the lovely
Zoe.
Okay, today's object is tiny enough to lose inside your pocket. It's a cracked pecan shell. Just one half of it, though. The inside has a tasty nut inside. The outside is rough, and honestly, it doesn't look very special.
What does this little cracked pecan have to do with Texas?
That tiny shell started a legacy that spread across Texas, one pecan tree at a time. And before I digress, in Texas, people pronounce the word pecan several different ways. There's pecan, pecan, and pecan. So I'm going to say it the way I've always said it. The way I grew up was pecan. All right, we digress, but so let's start with the pecan itself. Before Texas had cities, roads, or even a name, pecans were already part of everyday life here. Nations across the region, like the Caddo, the Tonkawa, the Comanche, the Wichita, the Lipan Apache, and others knew exactly where the pecan groves were. They gathered them along the big river systems where pecan trees grew stronger and fuller than most anywhere else in Texas, along the Brazos, the Colorado, and the Guadalupe rivers, as well as the Trinity, the Nueces, and the Red Rivers, and even along the San Antonio River. If the soil was rich and the river flooded often, you could count on pecan trees being right there. And pecans just weren't snacks. They were dependable. When winters came, and sometimes Texas winters could be very rough, animals migrated, plants died, and food got a lot harder to find. But pecans ripened at the perfect time, right before the cold set in. One single pecan tree could drop about 50 to 200 pounds of nuts. That's a lot of people it could feed. And they stored for months without going bad. That made them one of the most reliable winter foods in the entire region. Here's a fun fact. The name pecan comes from the Algonquin word meaning a nut requiring a stone to crack. And if you've ever cracked one, you probably know that's right. So Spanish explorers learned that fast too. When Cabeza de Vaca journeyed across Texas in the 1500s, he survived a harsh winter almost entirely because the Native American family shared pecans with him. He even wrote that certain groups lived for 2 months of the year on nuts alone. And he described a pecan milk drink that women made by crushing and soaking the nuts in water. That drink kept him alive, where there were no crops, no animals, and no backup plan. Now, pecans are full of proteins and can help sustain a person's hunger and keep them healthy all at the same time.
So the pecans basically saved him?
They did. High fat, high energy, easy to carry, and they didn't go bad very quickly. Pecans were reliable when nothing else was, and that reputation stuck for centuries. But the mystery behind this pecan shell and how it turned into a Texas symbol wasn't about survival of food. It started with a governor who believed a tree could carry a message. That brings us to the man at the center of this mystery, James Stephen Hogg. If his name sounds familiar, that's because he was the very first governor born in Texas. Now, long before that, he had already made a name for himself. At just 20 years old, he founded the town of Longview, Texas's very first newspaper. By 35, he was the Texas Attorney General, and by the age of 40, he was the governor and well known for protecting regular Texans and standing up to powerful companies. He stood up to the giant railroad companies and insurance companies that tried to take advantage of Texans, and big corporations that tried to control entire industries that were often putting regular Texans out of business. But beneath all the politics, James Hogg had a surprisingly sentimental side, and he loved pecan trees more than most people loved their favorite dessert. On March 2nd, 1906, he told his family something unusual. Not dramatic, not political. He had just undergone a surgery a few weeks prior, and he was still recovering from that surgery. On this fateful day, he told his family in the simplest of words, "When I die, I don't want a cold marble monument. Plant a soft shell Texas pecan tree at my head and a walnut at my feet. When they bear fruit, send the nuts to the farmers across Texas so they can plant them."
That's kind of weird, but I get it. He wanted his grave to be a giving site.
He did. He didn't want a stone that just sat there. He wanted a tree that would keep giving long after he died. He wanted shade for those hot Texas summers. He wanted food for the hungry. The wood from each tree that grew could help build necessary things to live, and most importantly, I think he wanted to create a new life for future generations of Texas. He was thinking about leaving a legacy that would grow well beyond his years. But you know what? It's a good thing he gave those very important words to his family on that day, because the very next day, at the age of 54 years old, Governor Hogg passed away from complications from that surgery he had. But Texas listened to his words. The State Horticultural Society planted the pecan tree at the head of his grave in Austin's Oakwood Cemetery, and a walnut tree at the foot of his grave, just as he had asked. When those trees finally dropped their first nuts, Texans gathered them up and mailed them across the state, exactly as Governor Hogg had imagined. Schools planted them, families planted them, communities planted them. One governor's final wish became a statewide planting movement. In 1908, a Texas author named Katie DeFan reminded people of Hogg's wish in her book called Texas Heroes. She wrote that children should plant pecan trees so Texas soil might bring forth rich harvests. Her idea caught on instantly. By 1919, the legislators stepped in. That year, Texas lawmakers voted unanimously to declare the pecan tree the official state tree of Texas, all because one governor believed planting a tree would matter.
Okay, but what about pecan pie? Because Thanksgiving is around the corner and I love me some pecan pie.
We're almost there, and yes, that part is just as sweet as the tree story. But first, one more detail. The original pecan tree on Hogg's grave didn't last forever. It eventually died and was replaced on Arbor Day in 1969. The second tree survived until the severe 2011 drought, when it had to be removed also. Texans planted yet another pecan tree in its place because Hogg's wish didn't just disappear with the first tree, or even the second tree. His message kept growing, and that message eventually led Texas to crown something else as an official state symbol. Something sweet, something crunchy, something that shows up on almost every Thanksgiving table.
Yes, finally, the pie.
All right, so here it is, the part you've been waiting for, the story of how a nut from a tree became one of the sweetest symbols in Texas. Here's a fun fact. Texas produces over 250 million pounds of pecans in a good year, more than most states in the entire country. Now, after the pecan tree became the official state tree in 1919, Texas didn't stop celebrating it. They baked with it, they traded it, they sold it at markets, and most importantly, they turned it into one of the most famous desserts in the country, the pecan pie. But it wasn't official, not yet. Fast forward almost 100 years later. In 2013, Representative Marcia Farney from Georgetown decided it was time to give the pecan pie the honor that it deserved. She sponsored a bill to officially declare pecan pie the state pie of Texas. And Texans loved and embraced that idea. The legislator praised pecan pie for being the perfect ending to any meal, whether served warm or cold, with ice cream or just plain. So the cool thing about the pecan's rise to fame is that it traces right back to Governor Hogg's legacy. His love for pecan trees helped Texans appreciate the nut and eventually became the star of one of the most famous desserts. Pecan trees spread across Texas. Families grew up picking pecans together. Bakeries perfected the recipe, and by the time lawmakers voted in 2013, pecan pie wasn't just a food. It became a Texas tradition. And because of that, your cracked pecan shell, tiny and ordinary as it looks, represents something that started more than a century ago. One man's final request created a chain reaction that influenced the entire state. Now, today's mystery has two parts, and Zoe's big question asked both. What does this cracked pecan have to do with the famous Texas governor, and how did it help turn a tree and later a pie into the official state symbols? So let's see if everything adds up, because it is
Quiz time!
All right, Zoe, question number 1.
Why did the governor, James Stephen Hogg, want a pecan tree planted at his grave instead of a marble monument? A. Because he was allergic to marble. B. Because he wanted a tree that would keep giving to Texans. C. Because he thought squirrels needed more snacks.
We know that he wanted a tree that would keep giving long after he was gone. So the correct answer is B. All right, question 2, and this one is crunchy.
How did Governor Hogg's final wish help turn pecans into official Texas symbols? A. His pecan tree inspired Texans to plant pecan trees statewide, leading to the pecan becoming the state tree and later inspiring the state pie.
B. He mailed pecan pies to every Texan himself.
C. He won pecan eating contest that made headlines.
D. He invented the first pecan shell cracker. And the correct answer is A. His wish sparked a statewide movement that helped pecans become Texas symbols. Great job, everyone. I hope you cracked the quiz questions and got them all correct. Well, that's all for today's episode. Thank you for listening to Texas History for Kids. Hit that subscribe button and follow the show. More importantly, share it with others who might find it interesting too. And if you have any questions or stories you'd like us to uncover, feel free to send an email at michelle@txhistory4kids. And don't forget, the best Texas stories live just beyond the lessons in your classrooms, waiting for you to explore.
Stay curious.